standing.
Yeah, okay. We're going to have the
Okay, okay, dear friends, they have done excellent work when hosting our meeting here. They have done excellent work here in Mongolia, but also we have to fulfill our duties, and that's why we have to start our session here. And even if every one of us are not in the hall, I think that anyway we are ready to go further and start our standing committee meeting. And the first thing is the agenda, adoption of agenda. And all of you have the agenda, and it has been distributed so that I suppose that we can adopt the agenda for this session. Is it all right for you? Thank you. Agenda is adopted. And then a few words from my perspective, and I want to start with a few words concerning the situation in and around Helsinki session in last July. Because there was an issue that caused debate about the status of the delegations in this parliamentary assembly, meaning especially Russian delegation who couldn't enter with a full capacity to Helsinki. And very many of you also manifested by the letter to me that this is not a satisfactory situation, and this was the reason for me to go to Moscow immediately after our meeting in 1 week time, and we had open-minded and constructive talks in Moscow, and I'm sure that we have the common approach what concerns the situation of Russian delegation in the future. And as you know, Russia is in here, and that's of course very, very understandable and positive thing all in all. Now I think that that case belongs to the history, but how to go further is another business. And in that sense, I have written a letter to High Representative of the EU, Mrs. Mogherini, so making our position clear and asking for needed steps to be taken when it comes to the adverse effects of the sanctions regime on parliamentary diplomacy. I believe that we all agree that we have to ensure that all PA members can attend our meetings wherever they will be hosted. Then another thing is that Secretary General and me, we were in New York just a week ago addressing the World speakers conference where the IPU was hosting the very successful meeting, and they had very broad and constructive discussions in there, and we had our own statements in the names of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. So maybe something else in the air, but most of those political issues will be on our agenda today, and we can touch all of those details later on in this meeting. So, but if you have anything to ask or to comment now, I'm ready to get the answers, the questions, and trying to give our answers to your open questions, if any. Rasop, Mr. Kovalyev. Wait a minute.
Thank you. Спасибо, господин председатель. У нас, собственно, один вопрос у меня. Вы понимаете, санкции, вы правильно сказали, инцидент считаем исчерпанным, и нужно двигаться вперед. Но есть одна небольшая проблема. Вот предстоит семинар по инициативе немецкой стороны, ряд конференций, посвященных борьбе с терроризмом. А мы не знаем, страны пустят нас или нет. Сессия в Грузии. Поскольку санкции-то не сняты, мы все время находимся вот под этим дамокловым мечом. Можем ли мы рассчитывать на то, что не будет препятствий по участию российской делегации в подобного рода международных мероприятиях Парламентской ассамблеи ОБСЕ, проводимой именно под эгидой ОБСЕ? Для нас это важно, потому что мы же, естественно, как и все, планируем свою работу. А сейчас мы не можем не составить правильно, однозначно состав делегации, кто поедет. То ли это люди, которые попадут под санкции, их не пустят. То ли это люди, которые не находятся под санкциями. Но это неправильно, потому что, еще раз говорю, что не должен быть приоритет внутреннего законодательства над международным. И мне кажется, что в том числе Парламентская ассамблея ОБСЕ должна сказать свое слово и подтвердить, что отныне никакие санкции в отношении парламентариев вводиться не будут, и все мы имеем равные возможности для того, чтобы участвовать в дискуссии и выезжать в любую страну, где Парламентская ассамблея проводит свои мероприятия. Спасибо.
So my idea is, of course, that we have to defend our parliamentary assembly's position and its autonomy and independence, and not any interference are not accepted. And it's clear that the open debate is one of the key questions in our culture, in our methods, and that's why I sent a letter to Mrs. Mogherini, High Representative, so to get some renewals to the implementations of the sanctions, so that it doesn't belong to what concerns parliamentary cooperation, and that kind of restrictions are not valid for our working. That's why we are trying to get better conditions for our working in various ways. Of course, these sanctions are sanctions of the European Union member countries, but we know that also some other countries have also adopted those rules and implementing all of those decisions made by the EU, even if they are not member countries of the EU today. But it's very clear that this must be solved and I do hope that in the nearest future we will have the positive news. Thank you. And Ukraine, Gerasimov.
Dear Mr. President, dear colleagues, I totally agree that the dialogue is the only way to solve any problems in this world. But at the same time, let me remind that there are Minsk agreements which must be executed by Russian Federation. And this is the way which is adopted by international society, adopted by our diplomacy, and this is the way to lift the sanctions. So I want really to ask our Russian colleagues to influence the executives in the country to execute Minsk agreements, and of course, in this case, the question with the sanctions will be resolved much easily and much more quicker. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, we go further. Sorry. Okay. Mr. Nery from France, please.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous abordons un sujet tout à fait important, parce que je pense que le fondement de notre organisation, c'est effectivement de faire en sorte qu'on soit un lieu de dialogue et de discussion entre tous les pays membres. C'est pour ça que la délégation française avait demandé des premiers à ce que la délégation russe puisse participer en Finlande à notre réunion d'été. Nous sommes satisfaits de voir que le problème maintenant est derrière nous, mais je tiens à faire remarquer une chose, Monsieur le Président, c'est que nous avons des collègues français qui sont allés en Russie dernièrement, et je crois que c'est tout à fait normal que nos collègues, dans leur action parlementaire, se rendent dans les différents pays pour pouvoir effectivement juger par eux-mêmes et avoir des contacts. C'est aussi ça la diplomatie parlementaire. Or, nous apprenons avec regret qu'aujourd'hui, ces collègues sont interdits de séjour en Ukraine et ne peuvent se rendre en Ukraine. Donc, Monsieur le Président, il ne peut pas y avoir deux poids et deux mesures. D'autre part, je tiens à faire remarquer que l'OSCE, à l'initiative de Doris Barnett, avait effectivement organisé au mois de mars une rencontre en Allemagne et que prochainement nous devons nous retrouver à la frontière entre le Danemark et l'Allemagne pour une nouvelle rencontre de discussion avec les Russes et les Ukrainiens. Et je crois qu'il faut continuer ce dialogue. Donc je serai partisan du fait que très clairement la Commission permanente affirme avec force que les parlementaires de l'OSCE peuvent se rendre dans tous les pays de l'OSCE en totale liberté pour participer aux réunions de l'OSCE. Je profite de l'occasion pour rappeler l'incident qui s'est passé lors de notre réunion en Azerbaïdjan à Bakou. Un certain nombre de parlementaires français se rendent régulièrement au Haut-Karabakh dans le cadre de leur mission parlementaire, de diplomatie parlementaire, pour participer au règlement du Haut-Karabakh. Et d'ailleurs, tout ceci se passe, comme pour la Russie et l'Ukraine, dans le cadre d'une mission de Minsk. Or, aujourd'hui, un certain nombre de nos collègues, dont moi-même, nous ne pouvons plus nous rendre en Azerbaïdjan parce que nous sommes allés au Haut-Karabakh. Alors, Monsieur le Président, je crois qu'il faut traiter le problème globalement. Nous devons aujourd'hui prendre une décision, dire que tous les parlementaires membres de l'OSCE peuvent se rendre dans tous les États de l'OSCE pour exercer leur fonction de membre de l'OSCE.
Thank you. And the next speaker is maybe immediately now, because he touched Ukraine, so that you have the reply, and then Kent Hanstedt from Sweden.
Dear Mr. President, dear colleagues, as my French colleague mentioned, and as you know, on 23rd, 24th of July 2015, a group of French parliamentarians, including our colleague Mr. Marini, visited the Crimea, the Ukrainian territory now temporarily occupied by the Russian Federation. And let me remind you that on the previous session in Helsinki, we adopted resolution on the continuation of clear, gross and uncorrected violations of OSCE commitments and international norms by the Russian Federation. In those resolution, we consider that the actions by the Russian Federation in Crimea and the city of Sevastopol constitute acts of military aggression against Ukraine, and also we condemn deteriorating human rights situation in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol. And Ukrainian delegation is outraged that Mr. Manyani have crossed illegally, let me stress your attention, illegally, the state border of Ukraine. And we want to stress your attention that these actions are a blatant violation of the Ukrainian legislation and not only international practice and law, and looks like an act of disrespect, first of all, to territorial integrity of Ukraine, and I think disrespect to principles and values of our assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next one, Kent Hanstedt, Sweden.
Finally. I don't know, is there more on the list in this actual debate right now, or concerning this issue? Because I have
Of course,
another...
this is open debate about
Okay.
my reports.
Then I will do two
So
things.
we don't make any decisions, of course,
Okay.
but it's good to
First
talk
of all, a small comment concerning this issue. I mean, we are talking about two different issues. One is when individual countries are saying no, like in the issue of Azerbaijan and Armenia. That's one issue. Concerning the situation with the Russian members of parliament, it's about sanctions decided by others, which is imposed and have implication on our assembly. So it's a little bit two different issues. And I think that the President and the Secretariat's way forward is the right way to do. We ask for the clarification on how to interpret these sanctions. So this is the way to deal with that issue. The other issue, if we have member countries in the Parliamentary Assembly saying no to people coming to their countries, whether it's election observations or whether it's because of this or that stamp in the passport, that's another issue we also need to address. And maybe we should have that as a special issue where we discuss what is the rules and procedures being part of the Parliamentary Assembly as a country, whether we should accept each other as members of parliament, because that also needs to be clarified. But I also want to raise a very important issue, and that is the situation concerning the refugee crisis in Europe at the moment. And I'm raising this also on behalf of a discussion we have in the Socialist group yesterday, and that we would like to ask for an extraordinary meeting concerning this situation. It is both one of the biggest political challenges to Europe after the Second World War. It risks to become a security situation and destabilize countries in Europe due to the huge influx of desperate refugees fleeing wars and failing states. And the proposal we have is, for example, that we could have an extra standing group meeting in connection with the Belgrade meeting, Bureau meeting in Belgrade in December. That would give time enough to be able to prepare it. It would be a reasonable group of people that would come, and it would be maybe possible to host such an event. It is important because of the issue's nature. Thousands of people are fleeing for their lives. Thousands of people are dying. It is stabilizing many regions in Europe, and also because of that we need to show that we are relevant, and we need to have a relevant debate in this format because it implies so many of the member states, and it would be to have a debate about the present situation. Thank you.
Thank you. May I comment on that? Because it is not a big surprise that you mentioned that it would be necessary to get together and to talk about migration and refugee problems. And of course, we will have our meeting 2nd of December in Belgrade, in Serbia, and we have to talk with them if it's if it's all right for them to host this kind of meeting in there, because it's not practically, it's not just so easy, but I'm in favor of that idea, and it would be very good if we could succeed in this effort. And thank you, I thank you very much about your idea. And then the Nordic discussion is continuing by the floor from Denmark. Mr. Jensen, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with the President when the President is saying that an open dialogue is very important. But an open dialogue must also mean that you are on common ground. And when the Russians have not implemented the Minsk agreement, we are not on common ground. We are not playing by the same rules. So that is a challenge within itself. And then I would like to second the motion from my Swedish colleague. I think also that we need to have an extra meeting where we can discuss the new challenges that is facing Europe.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And then the floor goes to Georgia, our friend Ceratelli. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also like to very briefly say that it's very important to convene especially to discuss migration issues and the crisis. I agree with Kent and some other colleagues. This is one of the most important issues at this moment, not only for the countries who are recipients of refugees, but for all the region of the OSCE countries. And today, the EPP group meeting, we also discussed briefly this issue with you and our colleagues, and we will come up in a few days with a special declaration of the group, also reflecting some principles, how we see this process, and also call all participating states, all the OSCE states, to share this solidarity, to share this burden as they can. Concerning another issue, which is quite interestingly been discussed in previous sessions and today too, and it's not decided, unfortunately, at this moment, which concerns our fellow parliamentarians traveling in different countries. Of course, I can understand concerns of our Russian colleagues. But the remedy is quite simple, but I guess it's very difficult to implement, not to violate those principles which this organization based on. 10 Helsinki principles, not to occupy territories, not to go in other countries, and so on and so forth. But it's not an issue we can decide it today. But there are very concrete things. When it comes to Ukraine, there is a Minsk agreement, and Russians, they can make some positive steps. When it comes to Georgia, and next assembly is in Georgia, and also is a question mark how delegation could participate, especially those MPs who've been in occupied territories without informing Georgian authorities. And it's quite simple in many countries. You can avoid those conflicts with the local legislation. You have to inform, just simply inform government that you are entering that territory, and that's it. Unfortunately, I don't know why, because of knowledge, because of arrogance, people not doing that, and then there are some consequences. In any case, of course, as members of this organization, we are for discussion, for the dialogue, for the work, and we are doing that despite of difficulties in that path. But I agree with my colleagues that we have to decide it, how to act in particular cases, because all the time this issue is raising, we have a discussion, there are different opinions, but one is very clear. To have, the decent attitude of your colleagues in assembly, if you are participating state, if you are a parliamentarian, if you're a member of this assembly, you have to respect rules and you have to respect principles. That's a solution of this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ceratelli. Thank you very much indeed about your constructive approach. And then the floor goes to Switzerland.
Dear colleagues, I think we should not overestimate our role and we should not underestimate our role. Not overestimate. We are a parliamentary assembly where we have to discuss, talk, look for dialogue. Not very much else. We have no executive decisions to take. We won't decide a war against someone. Maybe we won't even really negotiate something which is thing of governments. But we are the place where people can talk. So this is the essential value. And if we don't look for dialogue possibilities here, then I think we are missing our main role. On the other hand, we shall not underestimate the importance of this assembly. I think this organization, you correct me if I'm mistaken, but is the largest one in the world after the United Nations, 57 countries. We have a responsibility to this. I think it's proper that we make sure that all 57 countries can participate in all activities and that the elected member of parliament can participate in all activities without restrictions. If a number of countries, 28 if I'm not mistaken, belonging to one group inside these 57, decide by the way of sanctions who is allowed or entitled to participate in the overall meetings, it's not good. We are larger, we're broader than the European Union, with all the respect for the European Union, and it's not possible that 28 countries decide what can the other 57 do. So this is the second thing. And the third element, I think it's important, if we believe in the importance of parliaments, that we always keep a certain distance to the executive, to the governments. We shall not be told by governments what we're entitled to do or not. We are members of parliament, elected members of parliaments. We believe this is a very important role we have in every country, and we shall not be told by governments what we have to do. So this is my request, that we make sure that for the future we don't have similar problems, and we make really sure that the only thing we can do, which is to talk and to exchange and to have dialogue, well, this only thing we can do it properly. Thank you.
Thank you. I very much agree with you. Thank you about your contribution. And then to France, Mr. Voisin.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Je voudrais revenir sur l'incident et l'intervention de notre collègue ukrainien en ce qui concerne le déplacement d'un certain nombre de députés français, députés et sénateurs d'ailleurs, membres du Parlement, en Russie et leur passage en Crimée notamment. Il existe dans notre pays une association qui s'appelle le Dialogue franco-russe et dont sont membres un certain nombre de députés, j'en fais moi-même partie, et nous avons des échanges réguliers. Le dernier déplacement de cette association, pour des raisons familiales, je ne pouvais pas en faire partie, mais je pense qu'aujourd'hui, si j'avais été là, je serais exactement dans le même cas que mon collègue Mariani. Et je suis un peu peiné parce que le déplacement qui a été fait à Sébastopol était un déplacement pour déposer une gerbe au cimetière militaire français de Sébastopol. Alors je tenais à faire cette remarque parce que des sanctions, lorsque l'on honore la mémoire de ceux qui sont tombés pour la défense des libertés, je trouve cela un peu difficile à digérer.
Okay, and then honorary member of the PA, Mr. Suarez from Portugal.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je tiens à souligner clairement mon appui à l'intervention de notre collègue Alain Héry de la France. Il y a pour moi un principe fondamental dans cette Assemblée parlementaire et dans l'esprit des Helsinki nous fêtons les 40 ans d'Helsinki, et ce principe est la liberté de mouvement de tous les parlementaires, n'importe où que ce soit dans le territoire de l'OSCE. Ça, c'est un principe, une règle d'or de laquelle nous ne pouvons pas abdiquer, dans n'importe quelle circonstance, parce qu'évidemment, des conflits, il y en a eu depuis toujours, et n'importe où dans le territoire de l'OSCE, mais ce n'est pas ça l'important. L'important, c'est ce principe de la liberté de mouvement. En ce qui concerne la situation des réfugiés, je suis aussi d'accord avec ce qu'a dit notre collègue de la Suède, Ken Alsted. Il faut prendre des initiatives, peut-être une conférence. Je sais que vous suivez ça avec beaucoup d'attention, Monsieur le Président Enrique Canelve et le secrétariat. Je tiens aussi à souligner le rôle qu'a eu notre collègue de la 3e commission, Isabel Sanch, qui est allée en Turquie, en Lampedusa, au nom de l'Assemblée parlementaire, pour prendre des initiatives en ce qui concerne le drame des réfugiés de n'importe où autour de la Méditerranée, mais pas seulement, parce que je me rappelle très bien, et surtout en ayant entendu notre collègue de Géorgie, que nous avons visité en 2008 et en 2009 les réfugiés qui, en territoire géorgien, avaient fui la guerre entre la Géorgie et la Russie. Et ça, c'est quelque chose de fondamental, et il faut que nous prenions le devant d'une Union européenne qui n'a pas été en mesure de prendre des initiatives en ce qui concerne le drame des réfugiés. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. And the next speaker is from Serbia, our lovely friend Diana. The floor is yours.
Mr. President. Dear ladies and gentlemen, parliamentarians from Serbia are really proud to be the host country for the Ministerial Council meeting to be held on the beginning of December. And I also should reflect on the suggestion, on the proposal that was given by our colleague from Sweden to held in conjunction with the Ministerial Council meeting to have probably the standing committee meeting, but you know, I'm not in the position, and we are not in the position to make decision to say yes or no. So, of course, there will be several circles of consultations of us parliamentarians, especially on the level of President of Parliamentarian Assembly, on the Secretariat, General Secretary, and also with the chairmanship in office. I think that this is a good idea because Serbia is also in the focus concerning the refugee crisis, and that is something, this problem is a big problem ahead of all of us. And I think that we should blueprint a common strategy and common policy how to deal with refugee crisis. What we have seen these days is that violence is not the answer. Tear gas and water cannons are not the answer to the refugee crisis. One politician, David Miliband, has already used the terms that Europe is showing dark side of its character. So we parliamentarians should raise our voice and should discuss this issue and this crisis seriously. So I cannot anything else but to agree that we should meet and we should talk together and to make a common voice how to answer to those challenges. And just not to be cynical, but to say if there is no enough security within the OSCE region, at least that should be cooperation and communication and constant dialogue. And that's why I would, as parliamentarians, support these suggestions, but I would ask for another circle of consultation. Thanks.
And then just two more short presentations. First, our three. And first, Rosa from Azerbaijan, followed by Sanchez Amor from Spain. Rosa.
Уважаемый председатель, уважаемые коллеги, мы в Хельсинки все отмечали о том, что парламентская ассамблея является коммуникативной площадкой, где мы должны обсуждать все вопросы в диалоге с участием всех участников парламентской ассамблеи. Даже при принятии резолюций и решений, если не будет представлена какая-либо одна страна, однобокое решение, принятие резолюции будет неправильным. И поэтому мы просили, чтобы мы могли обратиться в Европейский Союз для того, чтобы дали возможность парламентской ассамблее участвовать полноценно. И будет неправильно, чтобы мы принимали резолюции однобокие. Также хотела бы сказать о том, что парламентская ассамблея является также представительной функцию выполняет, законодательную и контрольную функцию. Так как мы являемся законодателями, почему и исполнительная власть должен превалировать нас? Мы не можем, чтобы исполнительная власть могла диктовать нам. Мы, наоборот, должны, как законодатели, проверять, контролировать, чтобы они, наоборот, то, что мы выпускаем, издаем, они должны исполнять. И также, хотя и парламентская ассамблея издает резолюции рекомендательные, периодически возвращаться и приходить, и осуществлять контрольную функцию, если не выполняется, по какой причине, почему та или иная резолюция не выполнялась. Хотелось бы, чтобы мы у себя в сетях периодически возвращались к своим резолюциям. Что касается о беженцах, я хотела бы сказать, что мы не постфакт, а до превентивным мерам больше уделяли внимания. Почему люди убегают? Как можно устранить именно превентивным мерам особое внимание уделять? И также по второму измерению хотелось бы сказать, что кризис, который начался в 2008 году, хотя эксперты и говорят о том, что притихает, приходит к нормализации, но стабильности, устойчивости нет. Какой характер носит? Циклический или антициклический? Мы должны к этому вопросу еще раз вернуться. В чем проблема возникновения этого экономического кризиса? Не приведет ли к новым экономическим кризисам? Что этот вопрос стоит очень остро на сегодняшний день. Я думаю, что мы должны определенную сессию провести по этим вопросам, по новым экономическим кризисам тоже. Спасибо за внимание.
Yes, this is a report of the President of the Parliamentary Assembly, and I don't give any more floors in discussion. I have on my list Sanchez Amor, Hanstedt, Kamapania, and one floor still to Afghanistan, and then I will close the discussion. So the next speaker is Sanchez Amor.
Gracias, presidente. Brevemente, sobre la cuestión de nuestra movilidad como parlamentarios, yo creo que efectivamente, como decía el colega Nerí y el colega Soares, nuestra capacidad para movernos por el territorio OSCE debe ser completa, pero creo también que eso no es incompatible con un deber práctico de comunicación al país o los países concernidos. Yo he entendido que la delegación francesa visitó Crimea, pero no sé si la delegación francesa estaba visitando Rusia o visitando Ucrania. Y creo que en este tipo de situaciones lo prudente, lo diplomático, es comunicar a todas las partes concernidas la existencia o la intención de la visita. Me parece que es perfectamente compatible con nuestra capacidad de movernos. Y en relación con los refugiados, yo visité como representante especial de fronteras la frontera de Serbia con Hungría, coincidiendo con la misión electoral en las últimas elecciones serbias. Y planteé el asunto de la frontera de Serbia y Hungría en nuestro Standing Committee de Viena. En aquel momento, invierno pasado, la preocupación no eran los refugiados de Oriente Medio, sino los de Kosovo, que atravesaban Serbia, en muchos casos llevados por mafias, y pasaban al espacio Schengen a través de esa frontera de Orgos. En esa frontera de Orgos en la que ayer y esta mañana hemos visto en todos los telediarios del mundo las imágenes por primera vez de violencia entre policías y personas que buscan refugio en la Unión Europea. Es una crisis de tal dimensión que yo creo que nadie, ninguna de nuestras opiniones públicas entendería que hoy saliéramos de aquí sin algún tipo de posición política. Hay una expresada claramente por algunos colegas, termino, que es hacer una reunión. El Grupo Socialista en la Asamblea Parlamentaria ha preparado también un proyecto de resolución que redactamos ayer y vamos a discutir con los colegas del Grupo Popular para que hoy salga de aquí una posición lo más mayoritaria posible expresando la opinión de la Asamblea Parlamentaria sobre la crisis de los refugiados. Estamos negociando con el Grupo Popular una única resolución para aprobar hoy. Gracias.
Thank you very much. And then briefly, Kent Hanstedt. Campania from Italy, please.
Grazie Presidente. Ma questo ultimo intervento del collega Sanchez Amor lascia ben sperare nella possibilità di votare insieme un documento, se ho ben capito, popolare e socialista, concertato fra lui e il collega Serretelli, ma soprattutto per quelle che sono le responsabilità del collega Sanchez Amor in materia di frontiere, mi sembra molto pertinente il riferimento che faceva a luglio di quest'anno e alla situazione successiva alla frontiera fra Serbia e Ungheria. E qui c'è stata una proposta intelligente e interessante della collega serba, la quale ci proponeva, in occasione della meeting della ministeriale a Belgrado, paese strategicamente importante per le considerazioni che faceva Sanchez Amor, di fare in quell'occasione perlomeno uno standing committee che faccia il punto sulla questione delle libertà di circolazione. Per quello che riguarda l'altra questione, la libertà di circolazione dei parlamentari, certamente, come diceva il collega Soares, trattasi di una regola d'oro, d'argento, di bronzo, di un principio irrinunciabile per il quale penso che il nostro Presidente ha fatto molto bene a coinvolgere l'alto rappresentante, la Mogherini, perché non si possano più ripetere casi a dir poco odiosi quali quello della mancata partecipazione della delegazione russa ai nostri lavori di Helsinki. A maggior ragione, ovviamente, noi dobbiamo chiedere l'immediata scarcerazione di quei membri di parlamenti, quello ucraino, ci diceva ieri il collega Gerasimov, che sono attualmente detenuti in carcere. Grazie.
Thank you very much indeed. And of course, every one of us, we know that every decision in the Standing Committee needs to be done by consensus -1. We all of us, we have to remember this one. And the last floor goes to Afghanistan, please.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم د ټولو دوستانو په اجازه مونږ غواړو چې د اجنډا نه بهر موضوع خو بعضې موضوعات دي چې هغه ټولې اسیا او اروپا پورې تړلي دي په دې مورد کې ضروري خبره زه د پیلاندې داعش ګڼم چې په دې مورد کې به مونږ څه وړاندیز لرو ټولو ته خدای دې وکړي چې تاسو مونږ سره په دې کې همکار واوسئ.
Thank you so much. Actually, thank you for giving the time. We would like to talk about three important issues that this is a big concern, and that would be also as a problem for the Central Asia countries. And this is important that today we mention regarding this too. From this conference, we would like to support and should be as a voice of Afghan parliamentarians and Afghanistan delegations that we find the way and source for these issues. As you know that right now, Daesh is a big and strong, important, dangerous team, especially to Afghanistan and also to all the European and Asia countries. As we know that after the Al-Qaeda, right now, this team is killing the people around all the world. Afghanistan is always attacked of neighbor countries. We don't want to mention the name of those countries, but we are kindly requesting from this conference that Daesh is not only dangerous to Afghanistan, this would be dangerous to all Central Asia countries and also to the European Union. Yesterday we also talked regarding the drugs and the relationships of Afghanistan with the neighbor countries. We know that if this conference give the opportunities for Afghanistans, that we also be as a part of these committees, to be as a friend of those countries, to help with them, because this is moving day by day from Afghanistan to the other countries. The war is coming from the north to Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, to the Russia and Ukraine and to other countries too. Yesterday was also the news that one of the suicide attacks in Kabul killed 34 people and civilians. We are kindly requesting that please also include the security situation and agenda of Afghanistan and the neighbor countries, which is will be in a risk in the futures, to be also in a part of this conference. And we are promising that as that right now we removed Al-Qaeda and Taliban, we will also remove the Daesh, but by support of the international community, by support of the Central Asia countries. We just want the support of us, and we are promising from this conference that we will remove this and we will have a secure countries, including all the Central Asia. Thank you so much.
Thank you, every one of you. Very, very valuable discussion, and it helps very much to promote our own ideas, because I'm 100% sure that all of us, we want to have very high profile when promoting our values and our aims in our area. So I'm very grateful for this discussion here in this morning. And now we go further. The next point is the report of our treasurer, the new one, our friend Doris Barnet. You have the floor, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President, dear distinguished colleagues. Let me begin by saying that it was an honor to be elected treasurer of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly at the Helsinki annual session, and it is my pleasure to report to you for the first time in my new capacity. I thank you again for your support, and I assure you that I will do my best to continue the work of my predecessor and ensure that the finances of the Assembly continue to be managed efficiently. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate my predecessor, Roberto Battelli, for his excellent work as treasurer during his tenure. And I'm very happy to have him with us as member of the Bureau as a vice president. All of us anonymously supported the budget that Roberto Battelli proposed for the financial year that will start on 1st of October this year and will continue on to the 30th of September 2016. Our external auditor in Copenhagen will soon start preparing the audit for the fiscal year 2014-2015 that will conclude in a few days. I will be able to report on the audit to the Bureau on the 2nd December in Belgrade, and in accordance with the rules of procedure, I will also report to you in Vienna at our winter meeting. I can advance that all indications suggest that we will once again be given a positive assessment for our fiscal management. It is also a pleasure to inform you that the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly continues to remain within our approved budget. The Assembly's fiscal year will conclude on the 30th September 2015, and I can advance that once again, that we will be within the approved budget. I believe that our policy of strict internal financial procedures, oversight by an elected treasurer, and outside independent audits proves to be efficient, reliable, and transparent. In my first report as treasurer of the Assembly, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Danish Parliament for its important financial contribution in paying the rent for our offices in Copenhagen and assisting with the payment of furniture and computers. I'm also very grateful to the Austrian government, who provides assistance to our liaison office in Vienna. These contributions have made it much easier for us to stay within budget while also continuing to expand our activities. My gratitude also to those members of parliament, member parliaments that have hosted and will host Assembly meetings and events. The Assembly functions in an extremely cost-effective way, but we need the continuous support and solidarity of national delegations to ensure that the Assembly can continue its program of activities and meetings. I believe there is a need for more involvement, and like my predecessor, I encourage those parliaments that have not yet hosted the Assembly to do so in the future. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, dear delegates.
Thank you, Doris. Thank you very much indeed about your clear statement. Very good indeed. And now, anybody? Any comment? No? If not, that's good. And okay. Sweden.
Just a short one. I mean, in the Bureau, I have again and again raised the issue about that we need to strengthen the finances of the Secretariat. And we need to continue that journey. I Also would like to thank Mr. Batelli and also, of course, wish Doris Barnett all the best in this new role. But we need to have a journey where we raise this issue. I know we don't own this issue totally, but since the time when we fixed the contributions by every country, realities have changed. Some countries are very rich nowadays, and they still are contributing with maybe 1,500. It's less than the tickets when they are going to these meetings. I mean, that's where their total annual contribution to the PA is. That's for one ticket. And I just think that you need to continue that effort. And I wish Doris Barnett all the best in this position. And I hope you will take that with you and find ways to raise this issue to the governments about a more decent contribution by some countries who've gone from one position and today are very wealthy countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. I'm sure every one of us can agree with you. And then we move to 3.1, setting of duties and employment conditions of the new Secretary General of our Assembly. And Doris, I understand that you have a proposal on this agenda item. It works.
Yes, and if I just may, one comment on Kent.
Yeah.
Vielleicht kann ich das noch dazu sagen. Es wurde ja vom Ständigen Rat eine Informal Working Group eingesetzt 2008, um sich über den Beitragsschlüssel nochmals Gedanken zu machen, eventuell ihn auch neu zu sortieren. Denn wir wissen ja, dass wir Länder haben, wie die in der Zwischenzeit auch zu einem gewissen Reichtum gekommen sind, die aber immer noch, wie Kent sagte, einen Beitrag von 1.500 € leisten. Diese Informal Working Group soll jetzt eigentlich im Oktober ihren Bericht vorlegen und ihre Vorschläge unterbreiten. Aber dann, wie unser Präsident sagte, vorher schon darauf hingewiesen hat, bedarf es auch der Einigkeit unter allen Mitgliedstaaten, dass ein neuer Beitragsschlüssel verabschiedet wird. Aber wir als Parlamentarier sollten uns deswegen nicht davon abhalten lassen, trotzdem zu gucken, ob wir nicht andere Wege gehen können, um unsere Beitragssituation zu verbessern. Vielleicht soweit noch zu dem vorhergehenden Punkt. And now I would like to come to 3.1. Our new Secretary General. In accordance with the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly's rules of procedure and its rule number 40, Mr. Roberto Montella, on the proposal of the Bureau, was elected Secretary General of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly by the Standing Committee that met in Helsinki on the 5th of July 2015 for the 5th year period starting on the 1st of January in 2016 and concluding on 31st December 2020. In accordance with the OSCE Parliamentary Rules of Procedure, Rule 40 states, the Standing Committee will set the Secretary General's duties, remunerations and conditions of employment consistent with the annual budget. To comply with the above-mentioned clause of the Rules of Procedure regarding the appointment of the Secretary General Montella and as the elected Treasurer of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, I propose the following to the Standing Committee. First of all, duties of the Secretary General. The Secretary General reporting to the President, the Standing Committee and the Assembly is the Chief Administrative Officer and head of the International Secretariat of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. Having the overall responsibility of running the International Secretariat, the Secretary General is responsible for organizing all the Assembly's statutory meetings and related activities, coordinating activities in support of the Assembly's different bodies, President, Bureau, Standing Committee, General Committees, Special Representatives, and ad hoc committees, coordinating election observation missions and other parliamentary missions and field visits, maintaining liaison with the member parliaments as well as with partner parliamentary organizations, OSCE institutions, and field operations to implement progress under the mandate of the OSCE-PA. Managing the staff of the International Secretariat in Copenhagen and Vienna, and as well as the International Fellowship Program. Managing under the Assembly's elected treasurer the finances of the Assembly. And having said that, I will also make one extraordinary remark. We understand that no decisions concerning any position in the Secretariat will be made between now and the end of the year without consent by the incoming Secretary General, the President, and the Bureau. In accordance with the rules of the remuneration of the Secretary General shall be consistent with the Assembly's annual budget. Taking this into consideration, the Treasurer proposes that the remuneration of the Secretary General shall correspond to the remuneration of the senior international civil servants of similar level in the OSCE and the UN. In accordance with the 1992 Headquarters Agreement between the Government of Denmark and the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, the Secretary General's remuneration is net of tax in Denmark. Conditions of employment of the Secretary General. Following the established practice, the conditions of employment of the Secretary General will be outlined in an employment contract between the Secretary General and the Assembly, signed the Treasurer on its behalf. The contract shall outline all conditions of employment, including the rights and responsibilities of the Secretary General in line with employment contract of senior civil servants in the OSCE and other international organizations. In accordance with the 1992 Headquarters Agreement between the Government of Denmark and the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, the Secretary General of the Assembly is granted diplomatic status, including appropriate privileges and immunity. The OSCE Parliamentary Assembly's independent external professional auditor will be informed by the Treasurer about the Secretary General's contract. Is anybody there of you who disagrees with these conditions?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much about your report and your suggestion. Very clear and very understandable. Makes sense to hear that suggestion. And now I will open the discussion, and it's Mr. Nery from France, and then Lord Bones from Britain. So first France, then Britain. This time in this way.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Et je tiens à dire que notre délégation française est tout à fait d'accord avec les propositions de notre trésorière Doris Barnett sur les conditions de respecter la décision de la commission permanente quand nous avons prise ensemble à Helsinki de faire confiance à Roberto Montella, à qui nous souhaitons effectivement plein succès dans sa mission, et nous l'assurons d'ores et déjà de notre total soutien. D'autre part, je suis tout à fait d'accord avec l'intervention de Doris Barnett pour ce qui concerne le fait que jusqu'au 1er janvier, eh bien, le secrétariat de l'organisation administrative de l'OSCE ne doit subir aucune modification. D'autre part, je voudrais revenir sur le point préliminaire de l'intervention de Doris Barnett concernant les finances. Je ne pense pas avoir totalement des absences de mémoire, et je crois que nous avons pris un certain nombre de décisions très claires. D'une part, lors de la réunion du bureau à Copenhague, puis à Helsinki. À savoir que, d'ores et déjà, il y a une résolution qui avait été adoptée, me semble-t-il, qui précisait que, dès maintenant, il y avait une révalorisation de la participation des pays qui avaient des sommes d'un montant très faible et qui ne correspondent pas à la réalité de leurs moyens, et je pensais qu'on allait mettre en œuvre et que cette résolution avait été adoptée qui précisait qu'il ne devait pas y avoir de cotisation inférieure à 10 000 euros. Donc je suis un peu étonné d'entendre dire que cette décision est encore reportée, parce que je pense qu'elle avait été effectivement votée et adoptée. Donc je souhaiterais que vous me confirmiez, Madame la Trésorière, qu'il n'y aura pas de cotisation inférieure à 10 000 euros dès cette année. Ça me semble une mesure de justice et pas un effort considérable pour les pays qui aujourd'hui ont bénéficié de cotisations d'un montant qui est à peu près celui, si vous me permettez de faire un peu d'humour, je suis maire d'une commune de 1500 habitants et 1500 euros, c'est à peu près le montant de la subvention que je donne à l'amicale des sapeurs-pompiers. Donc je crois que pour adhérer à l'OSCE, 1500 euros c'est dérisoire et que 10 000 euros c'est déjà une cotisation minimale.
Okay, thank you. Merci beaucoup. Doris, are you ready to comment on that? Or Secretary General?
I rather would like our Secretary General to inform about that.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Mr. Neri is right. There were discussions about such a minimum. But in order to do that, we have to change the rules of procedure by consensus less one. That has not been done because in the rules of procedure, we pay the same amount that the governments pay in terms of the percentages that each country pays. It was also discussed at the Standing Committee in Copenhagen. It was not adopted. I agree with the proposal, and I agree, of course, that there is some disparity that needs to be corrected. This has been from the beginning, because of the consensus rule, you have to negotiate very carefully with who pays what. And the reason that we take the governmental formula is because the parliamentarians themselves could not agree on a formula among themselves. So we decided just to kick the can down the road and use the governmental formula. And that's what's in our rules of procedure. I would certainly agree with you that there is a disparity. It should be corrected. And perhaps you can find a way to make a proposal to the Bureau or to the Standing Committee that can be adopted sometime in the future. But thus far, every time it's been tried, it has failed to achieve the consensus less one necessary, or a formula that was agreeable to everyone.
Okay, we go further. And then Lord Bones from Great Britain.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. President, and thank you, Madam Treasurer, for clearly setting out the principles to be applied. I don't wish to ask the question now, but I do suggest that we will in the future need to decide in which forum and where we are specific about figures, because the publication of figures in connection with the salaries of public officials is common in virtually every democratic, if not every democratic country in the world today, and none of us can be exempt from that, whether it be an international organization or a national one. I agree entirely with Mrs. Barnett's proposals, but I would suggest that we should also add, by way of request and authorization, to the Secretary General designate, and that is that he be asked to prepare a review of the organization of the Parliamentary Assembly, its methods of working, its staffing, its budgeting, with a view to reporting to the Bureau and the Standing Committee as soon as possible after the commencement of his term of office. Lest that be construed as a criticism of the present situation, I think it is entirely appropriate and right and quite common when a new chief executive is appointed to any organization for such a review to take place and for the members to have the opportunity to see what changes they may want to make. And in conjunction with that, I would hope that Mr. Montella would be authorized to seek such advice as he may think appropriate from other international organizations and indeed national governments or national parliaments. And lastly, if I may pick up the point that our colleague, Monsieur Neri, mentioned, we did have a very clear understanding in the meetings in Helsinki of constructive working together in the organization up to the handover from Mr. Oliver to Mr. Montella. And I therefore do support Mr. Neri and underline what he said, that there should not be any changes to the staffing arrangements or any other significant changes to the administration without the specific agreement of the President, the Bureau, and indeed the Secretary General designate. My only addition to Monsieur Neri's proposal is that not merely changes to the staffing, but similarly also no additions to the staffing either. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. And short comment from the Secretary General, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I can assure you, Lord Bonus, that I have no changes in the staffing in mind in the next 2.5 or 3 months, however long it is. Roberto Montella and I have discussed this on a number of occasions. He has assured the staff that they will all continue under his leadership. I think that's a wonderful gesture and a good idea. I will make no decisions of any consequence that will affect his Secretary Generalship before I leave, without consultation with him. Thank you.
Okay, I think this is clear. And now I ask, can we agree with the suggestion made by our Treasury? No objections? Yes, the suggestion is agreed by the Standing Committee. Thank you very much indeed. And now I give the floor to not to the Secretary General, I give the floor to Spencer. and you know that this is unfortunately in that way his last report to the Standing Committee as a Secretary General. But Spencer, the floor is yours now.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This is my last opportunity to address the Standing Committee, unless Kent's suggestion that we have another Standing Committee in December is agreed to. I think it's an excellent idea. It would be a good idea. Of course, it will be up to the Serbs as to whether or not they can accommodate such a meeting. When you have a ministerial council at the same time, there's a shortage of a lot of things. I mean, hotel rooms, meeting rooms, so on. But I think that it would probably be a very good thing, particularly with new leadership coming into the Assembly, that we have such a Standing Committee meeting. We've had a wonderful time here in Mongolia. First, I want to thank our Mongolian host. I mean, you can see these premises in this room. You've seen the hospitality that they've shown, the professionalism with which they've approached this meeting, and they should be very proud of what they've done here, and it shows what a great country this is and how capable they are of hosting meetings of this kind. As the Treasurer has already said, we will complete our budget on the 30th of September. I'm very proud of the fact that for 22 years, it'll be 23 now, we have been within budget, and we've had clean audits by outside independent auditors every single year since I had the privilege of assuming this office. The annual session in Helsinki was a great success, and thank you, Mr. President, and to the Finnish delegation. It was the President and I conspired early to try to make sure that the 40th anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act was celebrated where it began in Finlandia Hall, and the President did a great job in persuading his Parliament and his government to host that meeting. It was very symbolic, and I think it was a very successful endeavor. So thank you, Ilkka, for that. I know it wasn't easy. He had to do a lot of negotiating with his Parliament, which, like many parliaments, is broke a lot of the time. But they did a great job, and it was very, very successful. We also did something quite different, and you'll hear a report in a few moments from João Soares, and that was we completed our Helsinki Plus 40 project, which was something that we decided to do early on to try to work up to the 40th anniversary to bring some visibility to the OSCE process so that people would understand its history, what it had done, what it was, what its goals were. And I think we very successfully, with think tanks in Moscow and Washington and Stockholm and Belgrade and in Copenhagen, we did a great job of, I think, exposing to the public and to the parliaments and to the governments in these places the fact that the OSCE was something important, something that should be paid attention to, and something that should be appreciated. We have summarized those conclusions in a report which all of you have seen. We're discussing now the possibility of forming some continuing activities with those participating think tanks so that we can continue to try to have a partnership not just with parliaments and governments, but also with think tanks and academics and people who think and write about these matters. So hopefully the foundation that was laid by the Helsinki Plus 40 project will pay off dividends in the future, so we'll continue to have that expertise, that academic knowledge, that intellectual spark that continues to invigorate organizations. We've got a full election observation schedule coming up in Kyrgyzstan and Belarus and Turkey. There'll be, and perhaps Azerbaijan, although you all are well aware, I think, of the fact that the ODIHR has announced that they will not go to Azerbaijan, and the Council of Europe will make a decision on that over the next few days, and the President has also indicated that we are not going to go if ODIHR does not go, so we'll see what happens. I want to say something about the Research Fellowship Program. There are a number of things that I'm quite proud of in the 22 years and 10 months that I've been in this job. Among them are the Research Fellowship Program, something that we started. We now have had 225 research assistants who have come through our program. I think it is now one of the most respected and sought after internship programs in the world. We bring together young people, 21 to 27 years old, who work for us for 6 months or a year, work in the Secretariat, provide high-quality research, provide 6-language capability for correspondence and for communication within the Parliamentary Assembly. They've gone on to work in parliaments and in governments, in the White House, in many places, and they all come back and tell you what an important event this was in their lives. How they were given an opportunity to work in Copenhagen with 4 or 5 colleagues the same age, interested in the same field for 6 months or a year, and work with parliamentarians, elected politicians who are decision makers, and how much that shapes their lives and how much it shapes the career that follows on to their internship. Some of them, of course, are in the Secretariat. I mean, Roberto Montella, who's going to be the new Secretary General, has come all the way from being an intern to being the Secretary General. In fact, he's the oldest intern we ever had. When he applied, he was 28 years old, which was over the age limit. But you know how charming and persuasive Roberto can be. So he came to Copenhagen and spent a year and eventually went on and spent 10 years in the OSCE in the field. You know, a very, I think, important experience for him. And then he came back when he was in Lebanon or someplace on an election observation thing, and of called and said, Spencer, I need a job. I've got a wife and a child, and I've reached the 10-year limit, so I'd like to come back. So we didn't have a job, but we created one, and thankful we are that he did come back and has done such a great job as our presidential advisor. And now I think he will be a great leader for this secretariat, and he will serve you well in the future. The Vienna Liaison Office was something else that was established during my Secretary Generalship, and Ambassador Notella, who has been our only ambassador there now for, what, 13 years, something like that, has been our voice in the Permanent Council. He's now practically the senior diplomat in the place. It used to be when he first went there, they wouldn't even let him in the door. They wanted to know why he should be there and why we should have a seat at the table. And after a long fight and a long struggle, we fought our way in, we fought our way to the table, and we fought our way to be able to speak and to defend the Parliamentary Assembly in the Permanent Council. I think that now, before they wouldn't let him in the door, now all the new ambassadors come to him for advice because he's the grandfather of the diplomats there and the one with the most experience. So I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of the news from Copenhagen. It's a one-page document. It comes out once a week. I think this is number 580-something of the news from Copenhagen. We decided about 12 or 13 years ago that we should try to in one page, once a week, let all of you know what we were doing and who was doing it, whether it was Isabel Santos going to Lampedusa or to Guantanamo, or whether it was the president traveling to the border in Syria. You saw it once a week. And we certainly realize that parliamentarians don't have time to read a lot. But they know that in one page, they can keep up to date on what's going on in this assembly. They actually read it. And it's about 2,000 people get this every week, and they see what's going on in the Parliamentary Assembly. They see what the president's doing. They see what the staff is doing. They see what the special representatives are doing. They see what the chairs of committees are doing. They see when Sanchez Amor is going to a border. They see when Isabel Santos is going to Guantanamo. They see when election observation is taking place and who's leading it and what happens there. It's a formula which I think has been tried to be replicated and duplicated by all of the other organizations in the OSCE, and everybody's failed. But it's a very successful tool, and I'm very proud that we were able to establish it in the Assembly, and I hope that my successor will continue to provide you with that regular information. It's been a long journey for me. I told the Assembly in Helsinki that I arrived with 2 suitcases and a budget on the back of an envelope written by our treasurer, Sir Peter Emery. No place to live, no office. We started off, but because the fiscal year had started October 1st and I arrived on January 1st, I had a check from Sir Peter Emery for $1.2 million to establish a bank account. So I went to the biggest bank in the country, the Danske Bank, and I opened an account and deposited $1.2 million. And then I sort of said, well, you know, this is a lot of money, and will we get some break here? Will we get some higher interest rate? And will you not charge us for exchange rate because there's so many different currencies coming in here? And they said, no, sir, we really can't do that. It'll just be a normal account. So I asked someone at the American Embassy, I said, what do you do? And they said, well, they should give you a better break than that. Go to this bank, the Jyske Bank, which we use now. That's the one that we use. And they called the president of the bank, and I went to see him. And they told us they would do all these things for us. They wouldn't charge us for changing money from one currency to another. They would give us a better interest rate. They would do all sorts of things that you would expect a big banker in your hometown to do. Well, I went to Danske Bank, and I said, I want to transfer the money to Jyske Bank. And they said, oh, well, you know, that'll take a little while, maybe a couple of weeks. We have to look at it and see how it's going to work and so on. So I went back to Jyske Bank, and they said, Danske Bank says it'll take at least a couple of weeks to transfer this money. And the guy laughed. He said, just write a check. So I wrote a check for $1.2 million and signed it. And the money went, of course, immediately from Danske Bank to Jyske Bank. It was the biggest check I had ever signed. But we have been with that bank for a long time, and they still serve us very well. You know, we also had to negotiate a headquarters agreement. I think the Danes and the Swedes will appreciate this. But we wanted to have diplomatic privileges and immunities, and we wanted to have salaries free of tax in Denmark, as they do in most international institutions, and the taxes, as you know, are very high in Denmark. So I went to the foreign ministry to negotiate the headquarters agreement, and I ran into a lot of resistance. Finally, I met with the Director General of the foreign ministry and said, look, I need to have tax-free salaries I've only got a small budget here for this secretary, and I need to have tax-free salaries, and if my local hires have to pay Danish taxes, I won't have room for anyone else on the payroll. And he said, well, you know, it's very unusual. I mean, in Denmark, we're very strict about taxes, so I'm afraid we can't do that. And I said, well, if you look across the window out there, there's Sweden. You know, and people come right across on the boat. So if I can't get a tax-free salary for Danes, for every Dane I can hire 2 Swedes, and they can come right over here on the boat. He said, that's a good argument. So we got tax-free salaries for local employees. We're the only institution that got it. And as a matter of fact, our headquarters agreement was the model for all of the other OSCE institutions. They came to us to say, how did you do this and how does it work? So it was a great achievement. And of course, I pay taxes anyway, because Americans always pay taxes no matter where they are in the world, and so it doesn't do me any good, but it does the rest of the staff a lot of good. I want to say, you know, I have a great staff. You've heard me say this many times. But it is probably the best, the most productive, the nicest people in the world to work with, and I think all of you know that. I remember when Sir Peter Emery had given me in the budget a car and a driver. And I said, Sir Peter, I don't need a driver. I mean, you know, there's no reason to have a driver here in Copenhagen. I think it's too pretentious. So he said, well, leave it in there anyway, because you'll never get another position. But leave it on the budget and just use it for whatever it is you need. So Kurt Loras, who you all know, who sits here, called me, worked in the international department, and said, I'd like to apply for the position of driver. And I said, Kurt, you're not a driver. He said, I'm a good driver, and I really want to come and work for you. So I said, all right, we'll hire you, and on the budget it will look like you're a driver, but you're really going to be my general services officer, because you're going to be the guy who helps everybody here find a place to live and to deal with the Danish economy and the Danish culture. And so he came and he did that. And he's been doing it ever since. We called him the Dane you cannot do without, because for everyone who has ever come to our headquarters, who's ever worked there, every staff member, every intern, it's always Kurt who finds them a place to live, who takes care of whatever their business is. He was the first employee, and now he's been there almost as long as I have, and he's done a great job. So thank you, Kurt. You know, he also, because we hired him as a driver, I didn't know my way around Copenhagen, so I had to go to a doctor someplace, and so Kurt went with me drove me over there and waited for me, came out, and he had worked at the Folketing, so he worked for the Secretary General Helge Hjortdal. And we went to the doctor, came out, and we walked by a park, and there was an ice cream stand there. So Kurt and I each bought an ice cream. I finished mine. We got to the car, and I'd finished my ice cream. I said, look, give me the keys, Kurt. I'll drive. You can sit there and finish your ice cream. So he did. We drove up, stopped at a stoplight. Kurt's sitting in the front seat eating an ice cream cone. Standing on the corner waiting for the light to change is the Secretary General of the Danish Folketing, who looked down there and he saw me driving and Kurt sitting there writing an ice cream. So he thought Kurt must have found a pretty good job over there. But it was a wonderful experience. Throughout the years, we've done a lot of good things. I think we have established the Parliamentary Assembly from something nobody had ever heard of, from a Parliamentary Assembly that the other parliamentary assemblies thought would never get off the ground, to one of those most respected parliamentary assemblies in the world. And certainly in election observation, we have taken the lead. And we have brought in with the ODIHR, between us, we are the premier election observation organization in the world. And I want you to know, you've heard many times about how we've fought with the ODIHR, and we have fought with the ODIHR over rivalries and who's in charge and who sits behind the microphone and makes the statement and so on. We have a cooperation agreement. It took us 2 years to negotiate it, and now we're observing it. So Michael Link and I are getting along very well. The cooperation with us in the ODIHR is perfect, so it's a nice time for me to leave. We're on budget for 23 years. We perfect audit for 23 years. Great staff, succeeded by one of my proteges, and I think that it has been a great privilege for me to have the opportunity to work with you and to serve you and to be part of this experiment in democracy, which I hope will continue for a long time to come. Thank you very much for your help and for your cooperation.
We know that it's not easy for Spencer, but I can ensure that it's more difficult for us to manage without this guy. But anyway, in the names of the life, we have to continue anyway, and we can be sure that that deep in our hearts we have all the valuable things he has been contributing our work in various ways, and we can be very, very grateful for Spencer Oliver. So thank you, Spencer. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
So I suppose there's no specific comments or questions to his report. We can conclude this item on our agenda and move forward. Reports and information on activities of the PA, and as Spencer just mentioned, election observation is one of our key fields. This is very high-profile activity in the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. And you know that we have very, very, very busy election observation calendar this autumn. We will be observing the parliamentary elections first in Kyrgyzstan. It takes place on 4th of October. And I have nominated our Vice President Kristiine Mutonen to be the special coordinator for the observation of the elections in Kyrgyzstan. I have also appointed Ivana Dopesova as a head of our observation mission in the names of the PA. So we will be observing the presidential elections in Belarus. And in Belarus we will be on 11th October. And our Vice President, Kent Hanstedt, he has been appointed special coordinator to Belarus, and he will work closely with Jim Walsh as a head of OSCE PA mission in Belarus. So these are clear, and there will be also early parliamentary elections held in Turkey, very important one, and those elections will take place 1st of January. And for this important 1st of November, yes, 1st of November. For this important election, I have asked Mr. Sanchez Amor to serve as a special coordinator, and Margareta Sederfeld as head of the OSCE PA observation mission. So these three elections are clear from our side now, but you are very well informed about the situation in Azerbaijan. Of course, also parliamentary elections are also being held in Azerbaijan exactly at the same time with the elections in Turkey, so 1st of November. However, as you have heard, the Azerbaijan government, they have imposed tight restrictions on the work of our traditional OSCE partner, meaning, of course, ODIHR, Spencer just mentioned. And as a result, ODIHR has been forced to cancel their planned observation mission in Azerbaijan. I think it is only appropriate that if our very, very vital and close partner, ODIHR, cannot observe, that we also don't observe in Azerbaijan. That's my rule in this issue, and this is very understandable, I suppose. We of course hope that the Azerbaijan authorities will reconsider their stance, hopefully, allowing an effective observation mission taking place in Azerbaijan. However, in making this decision, I want to be very clear that we are not closing the door for further cooperation or possible observations in Azerbaijan. Of course, we always hope for continued constructive engagement in all areas of the work. So this is the situation in Azerbaijan, and of course we are also taking notes what are the activities of the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly, but the most important element is of course the decision made by ODIHR and now the situation I just clarified. So this is a situation with these elections today, and if you have any questions regarding planning for these upcoming elections activities, I encourage you to contact our Secretariat. But first, I give the short floor to our Turkish friends, and you have the floor in this sense, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would be more than pleased to learn that the upcoming parliamentary early election in Turkey will be observed by OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. During your mission in Turkey, you will be our honorary guest, and I hope you will enjoy your visit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then our friend Gordana from Serbia, please.
Just to express my support to the suggestion that we express our solidarity with the expertise of ODIHR and with their decision how to react on something what I call mocking rule of law, which is taking place in Azerbaijan. You can't mock with the elections. And there has to be a very clear message from this OSCPA and in coordination with ODIHR that it is not allowed to execute in any society. With a message that is repeated, we have open doors for anyone within Azerbaijan to really work with us in establishing rule of law and elections as they should be and as they are in most of our countries. That's all what I want to share with you. Hopefully that will be our decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordana. And then the young boy from Sweden.
boy from Sweden. Maybe that's next. I just want to continue what my colleague said from Serbia, and I totally agree. And I totally agree by the conclusion of the president. But it comes in a situation where it's not just about the elections, actually. What we have seen lately in Azerbaijan is a very deteriorating situation for the human rights as whole. It's just 2 weeks ago or so, a female journalist of Azerbaijan revealed a corruption scandal, and she was convicted to 7.5 years in prison just because of revealing this. And there was connections to the leadership of Azerbaijan and to companies in Europe. And this is just one of the examples. We saw the deterioration starting already in connection with the European Games, and human rights organizations was actually had to leave the country, actually. So it's in a context of human rights, democracy, and of course I feel sad because I think we have had a good delegation here from Azerbaijan, which we have been able to have a good dialogue with. We miss them here today, and I hope we can find a path back to bringing the Azeris back on track. And I think we need also to have some kind of dialogue with them following up this, so they just don't shut the door to our work, and that we try to work with them and bring them back into track again. So I would appreciate, first of all, I share the conclusions. That's the right and the only way to go, but we also need to find a dialogue with them back on track. Thanks.
Thank you, Kent. Thank you very much indeed. And then Mr. Ceratelli from Georgia, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Of course, it's very unpleasant event what happened in Azerbaijan with the termination of already they terminated several agreements, as I know. It's a suggestion to withdraw from Euronest, so it means that they're withdrawing from the Eastern Partnership program, and it's really alarming, and I agree with my colleagues that we have to consider that, and important to talk to them. All those days here and in our gatherings, we are talking that this assembly for negotiations, it's for talks, for dialogue, and we are keeping the dialogue with the countries which violates more than maybe Azerbaijan. So we can't split observation missions, that's for sure. And I suggest, as my colleagues, to keep this dialogue with them, and maybe we could be more proactive too, not to wait what Council of Europe will say, or this decision is very important, but also directly negotiate with them or send a letter, or some of us were even ready to travel and to negotiate with authorities of Azerbaijan to change their position and to be more cooperative and collaborative with our organization, with the international organizations. Thank you.
Yes. Anybody else? Anybody else wants to speak now? I noticed him, and I give, of course, the floor to our appreciated member of the Parliamentary Assembly of the OSCE from Portugal.
Thank you so much, dear President. I agree with the decision you took us of not going to Azerbaijan in this specific context that we are living. Of course, as some other colleagues said, there were many unacceptable, as far as human rights respect are concerned, decisions that were taken by the power in Azerbaijan in the last months, and that is something that we should not accept. But the idea of closing the observation of elections mission is, in my humble point of view, my personal humble point of view, an error. Because, of course, we decided just a few moments ago to send to Belarus an election observation mission to the presidential elections. And the guarantee that we have that in Belarus there will be free and fair presidential elections is none. And we all know it. And there are other countries where the respect for human rights is at the same level as, unfortunately, in the last months it was in Azerbaijan. I think it's always better to go and to say it directly in the capital after the elections, during the process of the elections, even when the elections are a fraud. And I have been there several times, sent by you and by your predecessors, with the agreement of Spencer Oliver several times, and that's what we have done. And I think it's the same principle that should be applied that Alain Henry, in the point before, said that we should go. It's better to go and to be there and to say these things inside their capitals than to be out and to condemn. I remember the discussion we had with Yodir a few years ago when Goran Landmacher was our president, to send or not an election observation mission to the Russian Federation 6 or 7 or 10 years ago. And my personal, humble personal point of view is we should always send wherever there is something that is called an election. Thank you so much.
And then Norway.
I agree with my colleagues that there are several countries in the OSCE area where we can ask questions against human rights and free and fair election. But there's a difference between Belarus and Azerbaijan, because it's in Azerbaijan, ODIHR have been forced not to observe the election, and that is one of the reasons why we should say no to observe the election in Azerbaijan too. That's my opinion, and I also speak for the whole Norwegian delegation.
Okay, then Secretary General wants to give the comment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it's important to note that we have limited resources. There are 56 parliaments in this assembly. There are probably something like 400 elections every year, one kind or another. For that reason, we don't do local elections. We only do parliamentary elections. It's always been the policy, only to do parliamentary elections unless there's some special circumstances or a presidential election is, like in Russia, was particularly important. But we can't do every election because our resources are you. How many times a year can you go on an election observation mission? I mean, you've got a pool of a couple of thousand parliamentarians. 300 of them are members of our assembly. But you need to preserve your resources so that when you go effectively with a large enough delegation, with enough people to really try to keep them honest and to really know what's going on. And sometimes there's some elections that just don't make any difference because there's no opposition. The outcome is not in doubt. So why should we waste our resources there? Now, my friend João Soares has talked about Belarus. Well, we have gone to Belarus on several occasions, knowing that the outcome was probably not in doubt. But their civil society in that country very strongly urged us to come, to give them support and sustenance. So the circumstances are different in each election, but we also have to keep in mind that we have limited resources, we have limited staff, we have a limited budget, and if you really want to be effective, you have to pick your spots where it really needs to be done and where it really makes a difference.
Thank you, Spencer. And then Bulgaria.
Thank you, President. Just a brief remark. I would recommend that we make another effort, maybe a final one, to communicate with ODIHR and also with the Azerbaijani government Because I fully agree with the assessment of Mr. Spencer, but on the other hand, we should not give a signal to the people that are still in Azerbaijan and fight for human rights, for democracy, that we somehow give up. I personally believe that if we can still make this mission, if ODIHR is allowed to do what they need to do, then we should organize this mission and then make our full assessment on the situation there. Because of course, it's about elections, but when we are there for elections, we have the opportunity to meet people, to discuss, to really see what is on the ground. And I still believe that more dialogue with the government is necessary, not only on the elections, but on the developments there. The reason why they have decided to start procedure to withdraw from Euronest was a resolution of the European Parliament. We should carefully see this resolution, of course. But these developments, decisions taken already indicate a tendency. So we need to catch this tendency now and see what we can do to stop these tendencies and try to reverse it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your valuable opinion and contribution. Anybody else wants to speak? If no, we will move forward. Point 5.2. And it means that I want to give the floor to Mr. Suarez, who is chairing the ad hoc committee on transparency and reform, but also chairing Helsinki Plus 40 project, to inform us about the outcomes of this project. Also, you notice that our Secretary General also focused in this issue. But Mr. Suarez, you have the floor, please.
C'est toujours un grand honneur de recevoir de vous l'autorisation de pouvoir prendre la parole dans ce Standing Committee. Je pense que Spencer a, comme d'habitude, presque tout dit sur le programme Helsinki plus 40. Et je pense que c'est le moment aussi de dire quelque chose en ce qui concerne le rôle que notre ami, notre encore secrétaire général jusqu'à décembre, Spencer Oliver, a eu en ce qui concerne ce programme et dans l'histoire de notre organisation. Il y a quelques-uns d'entre nous qui savons que parfois il est très difficile de travailler avec Spencer, mais ça ajoute encore quelque chose à la saveur de l'opportunité d'avoir travaillé avec Spencer. L'idée de Helsinki plus 40 était une idée de Spencer Oliver. Évidemment, il y a Maria Shepurina qui l'a choisi lui-même, qui a aussi joué un rôle très important en ce qui concerne cette conférence. Sous votre présidence, ça a commencé avec votre prédécesseur, Ranko Krivokapic, mais ça a eu tout votre appui. Et la première conférence qui a eu lieu à Moscou, qui fut une conférence très importante pour le lancement de ce programme, dans le modèle que Spencer a choisi, nous a proposé et que nous avons accepté. Et je tiens à souligner l'importance historique du rôle de Spencer et évidemment ce programme d'Helsinki plus 40 est pour moi la preuve de ce que nous lui devons et ce qui continuera dans l'histoire du rôle de l'Assemblée parlementaire en ce qui concerne la réflexion sur le travail que l'organisation OSCE, avant la conférence de sécurité et coopération européenne, a joué en ce qui concerne la coopération, la sécurité et la paix en Europe et dans le monde. Je pense que ce fut un grand succès. Spencer l'a dit tout à l'heure, en coopération avec les meilleurs think tanks des universités de la Russie, des États-Unis, du Danemark, de la Serbie, de la Suède, où nous avons pu réfléchir ensemble et bien montrer, même à la partie gouvernementale de l'OSCE, le rôle absolument précurseur que, comme toujours, l'Assemblée parlementaire a eu en ce qui concerne la réflexion sur le passé, mais projeter pour, en ce qui concerne une stratégie pour le futur. L'Europe et le monde vivent un moment particulièrement difficile et je pense que nous avons joué un rôle très important avec ce programme. Évidemment, je souligne l'importance historique d'avoir adopté à Helsinki même, dans l'endroit où il y a eu la conférence il y a 40 ans, une résolution, mais je pense que ce serait très important et je l'ai proposé tout le temps. Vous savez les raisons personnelles pour lesquelles je ne suis pas allé à Helsinki il y a quelques mois, mais je pense qu'il faudrait publier un compte-rendu et peut-être même un choix des interventions qui ont eu lieu dans la plupart de ces conférences pour que ce soit disponible pour le public. Et aussi, évidemment, pas seulement en faire une édition ou un livre, mais évidemment être à la hauteur des temps technologiques où nous vivons et en transformer aussi dans un site dynamique avec la plupart de ces interventions. Je tiens encore une fois à souligner, au moment où notre ami Spencer Oliver s'apprête à nous laisser, l'importance du rôle qu'il a joué dans notre organisation et qui est bien clair en ce qui concerne cette conférence de Helsinki plus 40. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now I welcome any comments, questions. Not now. Thank you. And then some other activities. Okay, yeah, please, yes. Albania.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, earlier this year I was honored to be appointed by President Kanerva as the new chair of the parliamentary team on Moldova. Helping me reinvigorate this working group, there are 6 other distinguished colleagues, and I thank them for their contribution, influential both within our assembly and their respective parliaments. Since the parliamentary elections we observed in November 2014, there has been some disconcerting news coming from Moldova, chief of which is the disappearance of huge amounts of money from the country's banks. This financial scandal has rocked an already unstable political system where a balance is often difficult to find between 2 equal pro-Russia and pro-EU groups. Furthermore, the continuing conflict in neighboring Ukraine has a direct impact in Moldova, where tensions between Chisinau and Tiraspol are on the rise. It is therefore important that our Assembly continues to promote peace, stability and the rule of law in Moldova by engaging parties and organizations representing different sections of the Moldovan population. Our working group met on the sidelines of the annual session and discussed the situation in Moldova with the head of Moldovan delegation to the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, Sergei Sirbu. Unfortunately, this time he was not present. This conversation underlined that the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly can bring an important contribution to the Transnistrian conflict settlement process. While the 5+2 negotiations have been on standby due to a clear lack of trust between the parties, we determined that our team can promote dialogue on common practical issues and help build the trust necessary to resume the talks. Indeed, our combined experience as national legislators and as members of OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, and for some of us also as former government ministers, offers a unique perspective and expertise in a number of practical areas which can be of mutual interest to both sides of the conflict. At our meeting in Helsinki, we also determined that the parliamentary team should engage with stakeholders and advance confidence-building measures between the legislative organs on both sides of the Dnistr River by organizing a visit to Chisinau and Tiraspol. Throughout the summer, the International Secretariat liaised with the OSCE mission to Moldova to ascertain whether such a visit could take place before the end of 2015. However, taking into account the unpredictable political environment in Chisinau and the upcoming elections to the Supreme Soviet of Transnistria, we determined that a constructive visit could not take place until the spring of 2016. Looking ahead, the members of our team will continue to hold informal discussions, and we did so yesterday, until our next scheduled meeting in Vienna in February 2016. Following our expected visit to Moldova, I look forward to reporting on the concrete work our group will have undertaken in the lead-up to the annual session in Georgia. And with the suggestion of other colleagues, we thought that it might be better if we had a high-level visit to be organized, and of course it remains with the President to decide about that. We just suggest. And we remain open, Mr. President, to any suggestions for this working group. Of course, as you know and you have followed the news, other organizations like Council of Europe has been also committed, and we have strong statements by Jagland, Secretary General of the Council of Europe, towards the situation in Moldova. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Arte Dada. Thank you very much about your very, very good report. We really appreciate that. And now, generally speaking, regarding our special representatives, as you will recall, earlier this year I asked them all to report in writing so we can all follow their work more closely. This is a part of larger rethinking that I'm concluding also regarding our special representatives and where our focus should be. In the coming weeks and months as well, I intend to look at this more closely and be making a number of different appointments what concerns these special reps. However, I have already appointed one, because that's a new one. I have already appointed a new special representative on Baltic Sea area. And this special representative is Mr. Jürgen Klimke. And as such, I hope he can now give a brief introduction to his expected work on the Baltic Sea activities. Mr. Klimke, the floor is yours.
Ja, herzlichen Dank, Herr Präsident, vor allen Dingen auch dafür, dass Sie mich mit dieser ehrenvollen Aufgabe betraut haben. Lassen Sie mich hier, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, kurz darlegen, weswegen ich diese neue Funktion für besonders wichtig halte, meine persönlichen Verbindungen und Bindungen auch zur Ostsee darzustellen und drittens, weshalb und in welcher Form ich die Aufgabe angehen möchte. Zu eins, also weswegen ist die Funktion besonders wichtig? Die Ostseeregion ist eine besondere Region der vertieften Zusammenarbeit. Sie ist fast eine EU-Binnenregion, an der aber als wichtiger Nicht-EU-Staat Russland beteiligt ist. Die regionale Kooperation in der Ostsee, im Ostseeraum ist sehr eng. Es existieren Institutionen wie der Ostseerat, wie die Ostsee-Parlamentarierkonferenz. Es gibt sogar eine Ostseestrategie der EU. Die Ostseeregion ist zudem eine Wachstumsregion und war bisher auch eine kulturell, wirtschaftlich und ökologisch zusammenwachsende Region. Das kann sich nachhaltig ändern, denn wie soll man vertieft zusammenarbeiten, wenn die Sicherheitslage angespannt ist, vielleicht immer angespannter wird, wenn gegenseitiges Misstrauen die bilateralen Beziehungen belastet? Nur die OSZE bietet die Möglichkeit, unter Einbeziehung aller Beteiligten zur Entspannung beizutragen, Sicherheitsfragen zu erörtern, Missverständnisse oder regionale Eskalationsgefahren auszuräumen. Deswegen benötigt die Ostseeregion aus meiner Sicht eine besondere Dimension in unserer Parlamentarischen Versammlung. Ja, meine persönlichen Verbindungen. Ich komme aus Hamburg. einer großen Stadt in Deutschland mit rund 10.000 Schiffsanläufen pro Jahr und knapp 300 Liegeplätzen ist der Hamburger Hafen der größte Hafen der Ostseeregion. Als Abgeordneter aus Hamburg, als deutscher Abgeordneter bin ich Mitglied in der Ostsee-Parlamentarierkonferenz und deswegen sind mir Ostseethemen natürlich eng vertraut. In meiner Stadt pflegt man enge Kontakte zu Russland, nach Skandinavien, in die baltischen Staaten und nach Polen. Die Hamburger Handelskammer hat Vertretungen in Russland und die Ostseestaaten sind durch Konsulate in Hamburg vertreten. Ostseethemen haben einen großen Stellenwert in der Politik, aber auch in Deutschland, im sogenannten Küstenkreis der Bundestagsabgeordneten, dem ich angehöre. Mein Herz schlägt auch persönlich ganz hoch, was die Ostsee betrifft. Ich bin im Sommer immer, jedes Jahr seit 30 Jahren auf Bornholm, dem Bali der Ostsee. Und das ist etwas, was ich auch in Zukunft besonders gerne mache. Welche Aufgaben möchte ich nun angehen? Es geht mir darum, die Sicherheitslage in der Region zu analysieren und gegebenenfalls im Rahmen der Ostsee-Parlamentarierversammlung anzusprechen und einzubringen. Ich möchte aus der Sicht der beteiligten Regionen und NGOs erfahren, aus Sicht der beteiligten Regierungen und NGOs erfahren, welche Sicherheitsfragen und Differenzen mit Nachbarn es gibt. Ich möchte mich dafür einsetzen, dass keine Aufrüstungsspirale in der Ostseeregion in Gang kommt. Ich möchte vertrauensbildende Gespräche und Veranstaltungen initiieren und regionale Themen in die Ostseeinstitutionen und in die verschiedenen Tagungen einbringen. Der deutsche OSZE-Vorsitz im kommenden Jahr bietet Gelegenheit, die Themen der Ostseeregion auch weiter nach vorne zu bringen. Im Hinblick darauf befinde ich mich bereits in intensiven Gesprächen mit dem Arbeitsstab des Auswärtigen Amtes in Berlin. Konkrete Maßnahmen sollten sein, einmal Einbeziehung des Themas in die Veranstaltungen im Rahmen des deutschen Ostseevorsitzes, das, was ich gerade deutlich machte, Initiierung einer Sicherheits- und Abrüstungsfragen, Veranstaltung, Konferenz in der Ostseeregion, Etablierung eines Ostseepanels innerhalb einer der kommenden OSZE-Parlamentarischen Versammlungen, Erstellung eines regionalen Berichtes zur Sicherheitslage und zur Abrüstung, Erstellung eines regionalen Berichtes zur Menschenrechtslage und zu Minderheiten in der Ostseeregion mit ODIHR und mit regionalen NGOs, Implementierung von Sicherheitsfragen in die kommende Ostsee-Parlamentarierkonferenz 2016 sowie in die EU-Ostsee-Strategie. Meine Damen und Herren, ich werde in diesem Zusammenhang in den nächsten Wochen Kontakt aufnehmen zu den Kolleginnen und Kollegen der Ostseeregion, um das konkret zu besprechen, wie es vor Ort durchgeführt werden kann. Ich bedanke mich zunächst einmal für den Vertrauensvorschuss, den mir Präsident Canerva durch die Ernennung gegeben hat. Ich freue mich auf die Aufgabe, die ich sehr gern übernommen habe und hoffe, dass ich auch dem, was ich jetzt hier selbst als Anspruch für mich definiert habe, gerecht werden will. Herzlichen Dank.
Thank you very much indeed, and we encourage you to be very energetic and active and take the high profile also in the names of the OSCE EPA in what concerns the Baltic Sea activities in various ways. I very much want to support your work in this. Thank you very much indeed. So then we go to point 6. For the future meetings of the OSCE this year and the next one. And as you know, the next Bureau meeting, mentioned already today, will be held in the beginning of December in Belgrade, Serbia, in conjunction with the OSCE Ministerial Council meeting on 3rd and 4th December this autumn. And then our annual winter meeting is scheduled for 25th and 26th February next year in Vienna. This is an important opportunity to interact with the governmental side of the of the OSCE. So very, very important for us. Then our Bureau will meet in April, and surprisingly, in Copenhagen at a date to be confirmed a little bit later. And then our 25th annual session will be held in early July in Tbilisi, Georgia, and this is great opportunity for us. And the autumn meeting next year will take place in October in Skopje. These are now clear, and I would also like to invite all of you, all the delegations that have not hosted assembly session yet, or which are interested in hosting a new one, to put forward their candidatures. So in order to ensure the smooth function of our assembly, we urgently need to define the venues for the upcoming sessions concerning 2017-2018. Now we have some fresh new news from Germany maybe, and to make it clear, I give the floor to our treasurer.
Liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, der Deutsche Bundestag, der Ältestenrat, hat beschlossen, dass die Jahrestagung 2018 in Berlin stattfinden soll. Wir haben nicht 2017 genommen, weil 2017 im September in Deutschland die Bundestagswahl stattfindet. Und in einem Wahljahr, so kurz vorher, da können wir keine Jahrestagung machen. Deswegen, aber 2018 freuen wir uns, Gastgeber sein zu dürfen der OSZE-Parlamentarierversammlung.
That was something special from our treasury. Thank you so much, very valuable information. So, now the next point. Oh, sorry, yes, I was close to forget the floor, which goes first to Georgia. Someone of you?
On behalf of the head of the Georgian delegation to OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, we would like to invite all participants to take part in the annual session in 2016, early July, that will be held in Tbilisi, Georgia. We will try to organize it well for work, and we also try to demonstrate traditional Georgian hospitality to you. Welcome to Georgia.
Nice words. Thank you very much. And then Macedonia.
Hear me? Good. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Similar intervention like our Georgian friends. We'll be very, very, very glad to host the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly in Skopje, in Macedonia, in October 2016. It's going to be for the first time in independent Macedonia in these 25 years. And feel free to come, and you're all welcomed, and we'll try to do our best to be good hosts, just like our Mongolian friends are these days. Thank you.
Thank you about kind words. Thank you for your invitation and welcoming words. And then, anybody else? No? We take the next point on our agenda. It's other business. Sánchez Amor.
Gracias, presidente. Tal y como dije en mi intervención anterior, yo creo que nuestras opiniones públicas difícilmente entenderían que en este momento político en el que cada telediario de cualquier cadena del mundo está tratando la crisis de los refugiados, no hubiera una posición política por parte de nuestra Asamblea. Como era un asunto que no estaba en el orden del día, no vamos a pedir un voto para un texto, los grupos políticos proponentes, sino que queremos comunicar que los tres grupos políticos presentes, el Grupo Popular, el Grupo Socialista y el Grupo Liberal, hemos acordado un texto. El texto ha sido inicialmente distribuido con el título de Resolución de la OSCEPA, de la Asamblea Parlamentaria. No lo es. Estamos cambiando el título. Es un common statement de los tres grupos políticos. Por tanto, reitero, no estamos pidiendo un voto formal, sino comunicando que los tres grupos políticos hemos acordado un texto sobre la crisis de los refugiados que espero que sea del agrado de los miembros presentes. Es una reacción que habla brevemente de la pérdida de vidas, de la reacción social que ha habido en los países afectados, de las obligaciones internacionales, del papel de la Unión Europea, de la necesidad de contribuir financieramente a este esfuerzo, del riesgo de la xenofobia, de la lucha contra el tráfico de personas y contra las organizaciones criminales, el hecho de que existan corredores humanitarios, el riesgo de que ese flujo de refugiados pueda ser utilizado por personas vinculadas a organizaciones terroristas y, finalmente, también el apoyo a una conferencia internacional sobre la cuestión. Es un texto que creemos puede ser un punto en común de todas las sensibilidades sobre la crisis de los refugiados, pero reitero que es un common statement de los tres grupos políticos y no estamos pidiendo un voto formal de la Asamblea. Gracias.
Yes, thank you very, very much indeed. This is very, very important. I already mentioned also this issue in my opening words yesterday. So, as a matter of fact, I very much agree with you. And you said, I want to make it clear, you said that Socialist Group, ALDE, and EPP, all of these three groups. I ask Mr. Ceratelli to take the floor.
President, I'd like to confirm that with our colleagues from Socialist Group and with the Liberal Group, we went through this document. It's very important to have this joint statement on this important issue, as I said. Yesterday, Socialists and other groups, today EPP Group also considered it, and I think it will be very good if we'll issue this joint statement of all three major political groups in this assembly. Thank you.
And then Mrs. Debasova from Czech Republic.
Thank you very much for the floor. I would like to say on behalf of ALDE Liberal Group parliamentarians that we support this statement because we feel that the crisis of migration and refugees is very hard time for Europe, and we must do our best to support the solution of this crisis. So we support this statement as well. Thank you.
And Mr. Neri.
La délégation française se réjouit qu'une déclaration commune ait été trouvée sur le problème de la crise des réfugiés. C'est une demande que j'avais formulée au début de notre réunion. Je suis heureux de voir que cette question avance, mais je pense, Monsieur le Président, que ça ne devrait pas obérer la nécessité d'organiser un débat, une discussion dans un cadre qui pourrait être effectivement, comme on l'a dit, la réunion du mois de décembre à Belgrade. Simplement, je crois que l'OSCE aujourd'hui marque sa solidarité envers les réfugiés et je pense que les uns et les autres, nous aurions peut-être un effort de pédagogie à faire par rapport à nos peuples, c'est de faire en sorte que l'on ne parle plus de migrants, mais que l'on parle de réfugiés, qui est un terme beaucoup plus approprié à la situation de ces gens qui souffrent et qui ont besoin de notre solidarité et du respect de leur dignité.
And then the floor goes to Italy today, please.
Sì, grazie Presidente. Anch'io, anche a nome dei colleghi italiani, vorrei esprimere apprezzamento per questo documento congiunto tra i vari gruppi parlamentari, però anch'io, come il collega Neri, credo che questo, seppur un documento molto molto importante, non possa esaurire quello che noi dobbiamo fare. Io credo che ci sia profondo bisogno di questo momento in cui noi possiamo dibattere su quella che è una delle più grandi sfide del nostro tempo e su quello che è destinato ad essere un fenomeno di lunghissimo periodo, purtroppo. Noi stiamo assistendo a scene terribili, io lo voglio dire, lo dirò oggi pomeriggio anche nel dibattito della sessione, stiamo assistendo a delle cose che mai avremmo potuto immaginare. Vedere arrestati i migranti, veder sparare i lacrimogeni su chi fugge da guerre, persecuzioni, io credo che sia qualcosa di inaccettabile, sul quale come Assemblea parlamentare non solo dovremmo dire qualcosa, ma dovremmo invocare maggiore civiltà presso i nostri governi, perché guardate, questa Assemblea parlamentare si è espressa spesso sul tema delle immigrazioni. Abbiamo votato durante le sessioni estive, durante le sessioni annuali, tante volte risoluzioni su questo tema. Però è il momento veramente di essere conseguenziali e anche di, diceva bene il collega Neri, avere una sorta di funzione pedagogica nei confronti dei nostri concittadini, i nostri popoli, ma io direi anche di essere da stimolo costante ai nostri governi, perché non dobbiamo prenderci in giro. Anche tra noi c'è chi la vede in maniera molto diversa e noi dobbiamo invece far sì che anche da questa Assemblea parlamentare parta forte un messaggio di civiltà e di umanità, perché quello a cui stiamo assistendo è qualcosa di inaccettabile sul piano umano. Per cui io mi associo alle proposte dei colleghi, del collega svedese, della collega serba, del collega Neri, proprio su questa necessità comunque di organizzare un momento di dibattito approfondito dal quale appunto possa partire un messaggio non solo ai nostri concittadini ma anche ai nostri governi e invitare loro e l'Unione Europea anche a un maggiore senso di responsabilità. Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you. I have exactly the same opinion, and may I say that this afternoon, in our third session, we will concentrate to the subject, not now. And you know that technically, this is very, very difficult accordingly to our own legislation. And may I add that just today we don't have any translation capacity in our use, so that it's technically it's impossible to just make this kind of statement just now in the names of the Parliamentary Assembly in here. But I suggest that that we carefully go through the item in the afternoon session in here, in this hall, and then we will make very clear and strong statement in our press release of this conference. So then it would tell something about our aims, our commitments and our ideas, how to take responsibility, and then we will concentrate also on this issue, if it's possible, for practical reasons, in our Belgrade meeting, as we as we talked earlier in this meeting. But now we don't open the question what concerns a subject, so that what is the situation in the various parts of the Europe today. But in the afternoon, yes, and then we will put our common will in our press release in a clear and strong way. Is it all right for you? But then if Cyprus wants to add something.
I congratulate the three groups who formulated this resolution. It's very good. We support it. It was a suggestion made by me in the Socialist group at the first time, and the Socialist group accepted it, and the cooperation with the other three groups shows that there are a lot of possibilities, huge possibilities to formulate a policy on this very difficult matter to help humanitarianly all the refugees coming from all continents, actually, from Asia, from Africa, from various countries, coming mostly to Mediterranean countries. Cyprus, Greece, Italy, Spain, Malta. We have a lot of problems from this movement of refugees, and the OSCE should have soon results and policy to help and to formulate a common policy in Europe, at least. Thank you.
And can you agree with me so that we will proceed, we will go further in the way I just suggested? Very good, thank you. And we close. Of course, Mongolia.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I believe this afternoon we will have in-depth discussion on this refugee issue and this humanitarian crisis. Although geographically we are quite far away from Europe, this humanitarian crisis area, but we are very much concerned with this issue, and it's painful. It's painful for us to see this human suffering every day from the news. So on behalf of the Mongolian delegation, we also want to express our support for the resolution. And we understand the complexity of the issue, but I believe that through the discussion we can figure out a common basis of the organization. And I very much agree with our colleagues that OSCE is the biggest international security cooperation organization. We should send clear message and to the world how we should deal with this issue. So thank you very much. I wanted to express my support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And the last floor to Switzerland.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, last point in order to, which I would like to give you for the preparation of the Tbilisi meeting. I participated for the first time in this assembly in Helsinki. I was somehow surprised by the insufficient level of our rules of procedures and votes in the committees. We are parliamentarians, we represent parliaments, we want to give importance to the vote for the things we believe in, and our procedures in the committees was, in my opinion, not appropriate. It was not possible really to understand who was voting on what, at what time. I think it is important that looking forward to the changes which will happen also in the Secretariat and our organization altogether, that we really try to give more consistency to our procedures, to our rules of procedures concerning votes and proxies and well, all the electoral or the voting proceedings in the committees and in our organization. So I would like to ask the Bureau and the Secretariat to prepare maybe for the next assembly such more precise rules. It will be of a great benefit for our political work. Thank you.
Yes, and the Secretary General wants to respond.
Thank you very much. I would just like to say that the rules are written by the parliamentarians, not by the Secretariat. The rules changes require consensus less one. We have had, I think, 6 different rules committees over the last 15 years. There's always been an effort to try to do exactly what you've said. But it's never been able to achieve consensus less one to change those rules. In addition, to do the sorts of things that you're talking about would require a great expansion in the staff and a great expansion in the budget. That also requires consensus less one. So what we have tried to do is we have more flexible rules than the OSCE itself. They function by consensus, complete consensus on absolutely everything. So the fact that we have consensus less one, we pass resolutions by a majority vote, which is the only place in the OSCE where anyone votes on anything by majority vote. So we've been able to do a lot of things with limited resources and with rules that are more liberal than any other place in the organization.
Okay, now it's clear, and we can close the point, and we can conclude our standing committee meeting. I want to thank you very, very much, our staff, of course, for the preparations, all of you, of course, your very, very good and constructive contribution in here. And now we will have the lunchtime, and we will come back to this beautiful hall at 3 o'clock. So the meeting is closed, and I want to thank you. Thank you.
Well done.
So here we are. Okay.